Hey there, Writer Rebels. It's that time where everybody starts setting goals for next year. If that's you, join me today and we will talk about some tips on how to set better goals and to set yourself up to hit those goals in the future. Hello there, everyone. It is me, Scarlett Kol, young adult author, YouTuber, and storyteller. And today we are going to talk about goal setting, which is one of my favorite topics to talk about. I think it's just because it is so hopeful and has such great plans for the future that it is a topic that I'm always very interested in and will definitely talk about for hours if people will let me. But hopefully I'll keep this video a little bit shorter with some tips on how to set some better goals and to set yourself up to reach those goals in the future. Before we get started though, I'd like to thank everybody who keeps coming back here week after week. Those subscribers are fantastic. And even if you are just a casual watcher who drops in from time to time, thank you so much for coming back. If you are brand new to my channel, take a look around, see if there's anything else that you like. I do talk about writing and publishing, so there's various different topics around here. And if you do like what you see, make sure you're hitting that subscription bar and the notification bell so YouTube can let you know every time I put up a new video. Typically it's on Thursdays, but sometimes I will put in an occasional video just for fun. Anyhow, like I said, we are going to talk about goal setting today. And one of the reasons I'm doing this a little bit earlier in December is because I like to start my goal setting before the Christmas holidays. There's two reasons for that. One, if I get busy over the holidays, then I at least have taken care of that for the time being. Plus, I do use a 90-day planning system, which I've talked about before in my 90-day planning for writers video, which I will link up here. And I will be setting my quarterly goals at the end of the quarter anyway. Even though I do quarterly goals, I do like to have an annual plan in place so I can see where I'm progressing year after year after year. The other reason that I do it a little bit earlier is it gives me some time to think about things. Sometimes my goals don't come together very easily, or by the time I sit down and flesh them out, there are questions that I have for myself. So it gives me some time before the new year to put that stuff in place and to really think through what I want to do and where I want to be within the next year. The other reason I decided to put this video out a little bit early is if you are one of those people that is into astrology or the mystics of the universe, you may know that coming up on December 21st is the conjunction of Saturn and Jupiter. If you know anything about that, that's happening on the winter solstice or the first day of winter. And it is supposed to have some really great mojo for goal setting and intention setting. So if this is something that you are interested in or that you believe in, then maybe that's the day that you want to do your goal setting. So I wanted to make sure I had this video out ahead of time. And even if this isn't something that you're interested in, by scheduling your goal setting sessions on December 21st might give you a little bit of extra something to keep you moving forward. It never hurts to have the cosmos in your corner. So if the universe is going to give you a hand up, I would say take it. However, in the end, how you achieve your goals and whether you achieve your goals comes down to you. How much hard work you want to put into your writer and author career, where you want to see yourself going, and how much time you have to allot to those different goals. So everyone out there watching this video is going to have different goals. They're going to have different timelines that they have to work with, different resources and different capabilities. So I'm not going to get into what actual goals you need to set for your writer or author career. That's completely up to you. Everybody's path is their own. And so you want to make sure that the goals fit with where you want to see yourself and not where everybody else would want to see you or where you think you should be within a year. But we'll get into my tips and I will talk a little bit more about that. All right, so are we ready to go? Here's tip number one. So the first thing is to pick goals that you can actually achieve. One of the biggest drawbacks with not hitting your goals is planning yourself up for failure. If there is something that you can't actually achieve and you're setting it as a goal, then obviously you're not going to achieve it and it's not going to have any positive impact on your career or where things are going. It's always important to strive for something that's outside of your realm of possibility, but you don't want to be focusing on reaching a finish line that isn't accessible for you or is still way too far off in the distance. For instance, if you want to say you want to sell 500,000 copies of your books by next year, but you haven't actually released a book yet, you might want to rein that in a little bit because yes, it is possible to sell 500,000 copies on a debut, but the probability of that happening and that happening within a year if you haven't even released a book yet is a little bit excessive. So you might want to put that into a little bit more of a reasonable goal in the sense of, hey, maybe release my book by next year, or have more moderate sales goals if that's something that you're looking forward. And speaking of sales, that is something that you don't necessarily control either. Obviously, you can put every bit of marketing behind your books. If you're traditionally published, it could be set to, be a big release, but you never know. Your book could flop. There are a lot of authors who have been writing for years and years and years and still have book flops or series that just don't take off. And you can't necessarily control that. Obviously, if you hated the book that much, you wouldn't have finished it. So you thought that there was potential there. But sometimes it's just not going to hit its market. Something else similar is going to come out around the same time that's going to take off a little bit more popular. You're going to be late on a trend. You're going to, just not hit with the right audience. So creating goals for things that you can't even control, like sales numbers, is going to be very, very difficult. If you are an established author and you have a backlist and you have a little bit of a history on how your sales are and all that sort of thing, you can definitely start setting goals for sales numbers and stuff like that, because you have a little bit more control over it because you've spent more time in your career and have more of those skills and knowledge of what actually makes sense to you and what makes sense for your career. But if you're just coming out of the gate and expecting 500,000 copies to be sold in a year, that might be something that you're never going to reach. So you possibly want to set something that's going to be achievable, something that you have control over, and something that you can set on your own and get there. However, some people might say, well, how is that really a goal? So you're basically just setting yourself up for something you're going to do anyway. Well, you do want to give yourself a little bit of stretch in there. You want something that you do have to work towards to get, not something that's automatically going to happen. Well, if you know you have a publishing deal and your book is going to come out August 1st of next year, and that's pretty much a guarantee, and the book's relatively locked and loaded at this point, setting a goal for release my book probably isn't the best goal because you know it's going to happen anyway, and there really isn't a lot of hard work that you have to put behind it. Don't get me wrong, there's a lot of hard work in releasing a book, but in terms of the book actually releasing and you know it's actually going to happen already, then you aren't putting any more additional effort into having that happen. On the flip side, there's also something you can do called stretch goals. And so what you would do is you would set a goal of what you want to do and what you think is reasonable and achievable, and maybe just a little bit outside of your comfort zone on where you think you need to be or where you want to be for next year. And then set an additional goal that's kind of an addendum where you want to hit this as a minimum and this is what you want to do, but ideally this is where you would like to be. So you can keep striving for that stretch goal, but by setting that minimum goal, you are giving yourself the room to achieve something that is definitely achievable. And if you can hit that stretch goal, then that is just a total bonus for you. But if you don't, you have set a reasonable goal that you can hit and that you can work towards. Number 2, my suggestion is not to set too many goals or too many goals in a specific area of your life. I don't know what you're going to do when you sit down and set your goals, but I do set goals in different areas of my life, financially, some of my author-writer business, some of the things I want to do at home, some of my relationship stuff. So I have various different areas of my life where I'm setting goals every year. If you're only in one specific area, then this might not apply to you, but you don't want to set too many goals. If you have too many goals, then you're going to be kind of scattered all over the place trying to reach those. And you're not focusing your energy on reaching a specific goal. You're trying to focus your energy on reaching 15 different goals. When you spread yourself thin like that, then you are going to find out that you're probably not going to hit any of those goals. So you're going to come to next year and it would probably be a lot more motivating to find out that you've hit 2 really strong goals that you've really, really wanted to work towards instead of not hitting the 15 goals that you set for yourself. The next tip is to set goals on where you want to be next year. So when you could just set a goal of anything completely arbitrary, hey, I want to do this with my author career, I want to learn ads, I want to do this, I want to do that. That's fine if that makes sense to what you want to do. This is the part that usually takes a lot of time for me and why I try to set up my goal setting process earlier in the month of December, because this is where I want to sit down and figure out, where do I want to be next year? As an author, as a writer, where do I want to be? Maybe it's my debut year and I'm starting out small. Maybe I've been doing this for 15 years already and I'm a lot more established and I want to level up. Or maybe Maybe it's just stability. Maybe I just want to do just as well as I did this year and maybe take some time back for myself. Maybe I don't want to work as hard. Working towards a goal doesn't necessarily mean you have to work harder. It's making changes to achieve something. And some of that is working harder. And then some of that could be working less to make yourself happier or to free up more time in your schedule to do other things that you're passionate about, whether that be other writing projects or other things in your life that take up time. So a goal doesn't necessarily mean to be something that you have to work towards. It could be something that you're scaling back on as well. But the only person that's going to know where you need to be or where you want to be next year is you. So you really need to sit down and analyze and take a look at yourself and what you're doing and how this year has gone and how does that make sense to you? Are you running right up to the end of your deadline? Does that work for you? Or do you need to be able to figure out more buffer time in your writer-author career? Are you finding your sales aren't working and you want to spend more time learning about marketing because you don't really know a lot about it? Maybe your marketing stuff's on point, but you aren't writing as much as you would like to. There could be various different things that you could be working towards, but you need to sit down and figure out what went well this year and where do you want to be next year. And then you need to set your goals according to what's going to get you to that place next year. Maybe everybody in the world is telling you that you need to do Facebook ads. Facebook ads are the thing to do, but it isn't really something that interests you, and it isn't something that you're even ready for at this point. Maybe you only have a book out and you really want to learn more about craft, or maybe you would like to spend more time doing different things. Just because everybody recommends something doesn't necessarily mean that's the right goal for you to set. You really, really, really need to listen to yourself and where you want your career to go. The other thing to remember is this is only a year. After that next year, you're going to reevaluate these things and then you're going to move on and build on the next thing. You can't automatically go from 0 to 60 all in 1 year. You need to build your career and build slowly. So where do you want to be next year? And then when you take a look at next year, where do you want to be the next year? Maybe it's something that you do need to sit back and plan 5 years in advance. That could definitely change over those 5 years. But if you sit back and be like, I want to do this, and I want to do this, and I want to do this, you can set your goals for your years to start hitting those steps and reaching for that next plateau that you want to be on. A year is a very short and a very long amount of time. It is long enough to be able to do a lot of things within that amount of time. But honestly, it's rather short in the lifespan of your career. If you're going to be doing this for 10, 15, 20, 30 years, 1 year is really just a blip, but it's enough time to move you forward on the goals that you want to do. So you really need to make sure that you're setting goals that are putting you in the place that you want to be. This is very, very difficult sometimes because there's a lot of noise, especially in the self-publishing community, telling you what you need to do. You don't necessarily need to do what everybody's telling you to do. You need to do what makes sense for you and what's going to put your career in the place you want it to be. The next thing you need to do is create an action plan. This kind of goes back to the one I said earlier about setting only a few goals in a specific area as opposed to 15 goals. Well, it may feel like you need to do a bunch of things, but maybe a bunch of those 15 goals are actually stepping stones on the way to a bigger goal. So if you're taking a look at one goal, it might involve a lot of different steps to get there. So what you need to do is once you've established which are the goals that you want to reach, you need to create an action plan of how you are going to achieve them. There's a lot of people who will set a goal, but they won't create an action plan. So they want to achieve a certain level of sales. They want to write faster or do a specific publishing schedule that they have planned, but they don't write out what the action steps of what they need to do to get there. So it's basically just like running forward into a dark forest and not knowing where you're supposed to come out. You have no map, you have no compass, and you're just running and running and running and running and running. Well, the fact of the matter is, in a year, you could still be lost in that forest. But if you have actionable steps and plans in place to put yourself towards that goal, then you're going to come out the other side and hopefully reach your goal, or at least start seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, be moving in the right direction. The other thing about setting an action plan is you might realize that there just isn't enough time in your schedule, or there might be enough not enough resources in your life to achieve those goals that you need. So maybe you don't have the experience that you need to self-publish your book right now, and you need to learn some other things. Well, those are going to be action steps towards your goal. Or maybe, you want to write 10 novels next year. That's awesome. But if you have a full-time job and a part-time job and 3 children, and you volunteer and do all this sort of stuff, like, when are you going to sleep? You need to take a look at what you need to do to achieve your goals, and then see if there's enough time and resources in your upcoming year to actually achieve that. If it's not a possibility, then maybe, you only want to write 3 books next year, not 10. Or maybe it's only 1 book. Maybe it's only part of a book. You have to take a look at your personal circumstances and see what makes sense to you. And by making the action steps of what it will take to achieve those goals, this is kind of like a double check to make sure that this is something that is actually achievable, like I mentioned in my first tip, and something you can actually work towards. Furthermore, the other thing that you need to take a look at when you're doing your action plan is when you take a look at that, let's say your goal is these 10 books in the year, and you sit there and you figure out how long it's going to take, and you figured it out and everything's going to work for you. Have you scheduled in any setbacks? Not everything usually works exactly how you want it to. Maybe an editor is going to be late, or you're going to be frustrated with a book and not get there. You're going to get sick. Your kid's going to get sick. Something's going to happen. Hey, there could be a pandemic that could mess with your inspiration. You really don't know what's going to be coming down the pipe. So if you create an action plan, you're going to know if you have buffer room to complete your goal within the year, or if you're going to be pushing it really, really tight. If you're going to be pushing it tight, maybe 10 books is that stretch goal, and you should really set it for 7 to give yourself that buffer time to accomplish what you need to accomplish while possibly things going wrong, because things do go wrong. They go wrong all the time, and they go wrong for whatever reason. So you do need to make sure that in your action plan, when you take a look and you're comparing it against your time and resources and what you can achieve in a year, that you know that there's going to be months that you're going to be busy, that there's going to be things that are going to come up that you weren't expecting, that are going to throw a monkey wrench into these plans. So having an action plan will help keep you on track. Plus, it will be able to show you whether or not you really do have that time. Okay, the next one is going to sound really, really obvious, but there are a lot of people who don't do this, and it is write your goals down. Like I said, sounds really, really obvious, but there's so many people who come up with goals in their head of what they want to do, but they never actually write these goals down. So when they come back a year later, do you remember what your goals are? Do you remember exactly what you were trying to work towards? Having them written down and going through the process of physically writing them down is going to help solidify it in your brain. I also like to put them up. I do my goal setting and I set my goals, and I have a bulletin board just over there where I show what my goals are for the year. So every time I look over at that bulletin board, I know what I'm working towards. I know what those things are that mean something to me, because I spent the time in December figuring out where I want to be, what I need to do to get there, and what makes sense for me and what's achievable. And so every time I look at that board, I'm going to be able to see those goals. But if I don't write them down, I'm not working towards something concrete. I'm kind of still running in that forest again, and I don't really know where I'm trying to end up. And an important thing about writing your goals down is my next tip, in that you need to reevaluate your goals as you go. So just because you set them in December, there are some people who will set them, lock them away, and take a look at them next December. Well, if you aren't reminding yourself of what you're working towards, then you will stumble and things will kind of go to the back burner, and you won't really be like in the space to achieve your goals. So reminding yourself about them, taking a look every couple of months, posting it somewhere in your office that you're going to see it, reminds you of what you're working towards, what's important to you, and what you're trying to achieve. So even though goals may change over the year, or something may fall off that doesn't really make sense anymore, it kind of gives you a direction. It gives you a compass as to where you want your author career to go. So having them written down, having them available, and reevaluating them at least periodically. I would suggest at a minimum every 6 months, at least halfway through the year, take a look at your goals. Do they still make sense? Is this something you're still working towards? And how are you doing towards working towards that goal? Because then that still gives you another 6 months to keep working towards achieving it. If it's only one goal, then it might be very, very simple. But Reevaluating your goals on a regular basis will help to keep you motivated and will help to keep you in line, and you have a much better chance of achieving the goals that you set out to do if you take a look at them periodically and remind yourself that that's what you're working towards. And my last tip, and this could be helpful depending on when you're watching this video, remember that a year can start at any time. Just because it's December and you want to start things in January doesn't necessarily mean you have to use a January-December schedule. A lot of people, and myself included, still think that September is almost like the beginning of the year because that's when school starts and that's what you're kind of conditioned to work towards. Maybe you want to start your year on your birthday or an anniversary or a day that means something to you. You don't need to set goals for January 1st to work through till December 31st. A year can be any time. And like I said about reevaluating your goals, maybe you've taken a complete pivot and a different shift in what you want to do. When you set your goals in December, you were a young adult writer and you were working towards a specific series and you had all of these different goals that you wanted to do. And then all of a sudden, some book that you had written that was contemporary romance ended up getting a traditional publishing contract that you really weren't expecting. So things have taken a bit of a tumble, a bit of a different turn. Do you need to wait till December again to reset goals in this new route that you're taking? Absolutely not. You can start a year whenever you want to start a year. If you need to pivot on your goals and restart in February, then you're going February to February. No big deal. A year can be any time. A lot of people do look at it because it is the end of the calendar year and we do kind of do that like 2020 wrapped and all of those sorts of things where people are reevaluating how their year went, but it doesn't necessarily mean anything. Goal setting and in December is actually completely arbitrary. So if you want to set your goals in March, do that. If you set your goals in December and they aren't working and you need to redo it again in August, do that. Do whatever works for you and what's going to make sense for you. And if a full year is too much for you to deal with, break it down. Like I mentioned in my 90-day planning video, I set goals every 90 days. Most of those are set in terms of working towards my bigger goals. I set annual goals that are going to be bigger, and the goals that I'm setting kind of on my 90-day plan are a little bit smaller that are going to move me towards those bigger goals. But if that works for you, do that. Set monthly goals, set weekly goals, set 90-day goals. I like a little bit longer so that you can see some progress happening. So 90 days, 6 months, something like that. But you got to do what works for you. And if you need to set smaller milestone goals 12 times a year to get you where you need to be, do it. If you need to set one goal a year and work all 12 months towards it, go for it. Whatever you're doing to move yourself forward and to keep yourself motivated in the process. That's the key with goals, is you want to keep yourself motivated as you're working towards them. If you start to lose motivation towards the goals that you're setting, are those really the goals that you should be setting for yourself? If it's not something that's going to be making you happy, if it's not something that you really want to see yourself doing, why are you doing it? When you set your goals, it's to achieve something that you want. It's to achieve something that you have been working towards your whole life, the last year, the last 6 months, whatever. If it's not something you really want to achieve, don't. Find a new goal, reassess, reevaluate. All right, so those are my tips on setting better goals and to make sure that you put yourself in a place to succeed on the goals that you are setting. If you have any goals or any other tips, make sure you're leaving in the comments below because I would love to hear it. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you're giving it a thumbs up because that's going to let YouTube know that this is a video worth watching. If you are not a subscriber here, but you do want to get more content from me, make sure you're hitting that subscription bar and the notification bell down there in the corner, and it will let you know every time I put out a new video. For the time being though, you guys have fun with your goal setting. Maybe take advantage of that Saturn-Jupiter conjunction on December 21st. It's never going to hurt anybody to get on top of their goal setting a little bit early before the new year starts. All right, thank you so much for joining me, and I will see you all next week.